Welcome back, viewers. Today I'll tell you about my pen pal Amy. I'll also take a detour with a little anecdote about our high school supervisor, Miss Zaina. So, when we were in 7th standard, Miss Zaina was the high school supervisor. She was a Parsi spinster, complete with the strict school supervisor look. We all secretly giggled behind her back because her dresses were kind of see through. She was always kind to me though, but I did not realize that until later. This is why I feel particularly bad about something that happened a few years later. By this time, I was studying at Sophia College and had to take a train that I changed at Dadar station. While we are familiar with the crazy rush at Bombay local railway stations, Dadar was particularly brutal because it was a junction between the central and western railways. So a lot of people got down there to switch trains. So one morning, I got off at Dadar station as usual at Central Railway and went running to the other platform for Western Railway. Started running down the stairs when I saw that the train had already arrived. I guess Miss Zaina lived on the western side, though I had no way of knowing it then. So I see the train pull in at the platform and rush down the stairs to get into my first class ladies compartment, which was right in front of those stairs. I waited for the compartment to vomit out the wave of women who were getting down first. As the wave of women descended from the compartment, one woman fell. Her dress went flying above her face, exposing her innerwear. All the women burst out laughing. I joined in, laughing heartily. And then that woman got the dress off her face, and our eyes met. You guessed it. Recognition hit, and I realized that I was laughing at Miss Zaina, and now I was also staring right at her while she looked back at me. So, Miss Zaina had recognized me. I could see that in her eyes. But then I couldn't put the brakes on my laughter. I couldn't stop laughing so suddenly. The laughter had to run its course. This awkward moment is embedded in my memory as the Miss Zaina moment. So, back to my story. Miss Zaina kept bringing in new initiatives to the high school, and one of them was to make a pen pal arrangement for us. We were all giddy with excitement when she walked into our 7th standard class one day with a bunch of fullscape sheets in her hand. These were letters from kids our age who were studying at a school in England. It was probably a class project for them, for it seems that the letters were written while they were in school. One by one, we went up to Miss Zaina and she asked us a few questions before handing us a letter to reply to. Ever the romantic, my mind immediately went to the idea of pen pals falling in love and getting married. But I had learned that you can't just express these ideas without repercussions. This was actually an intrinsic knowing also. Because years ago, I remember in first standard, Hilda teacher had asked us what we aspired to become when we grew up. My instant thought was that I wanted to be a wife. That was the all and end all of my ambition in life. But when it was my turn to answer, I grasped at straws and answered, I want to become a teacher when I grew up. Even as a 5 or 6 year old, I knew that the idea of just wanting to be a wife would be frowned upon. So back to Miss Zaina. She asked me if I wanted a boy to be my pen pal or a girl. Shyly, I said girl. Of course, I wanted a boy pen pal, but I was not about to admit that. Miss Zaina handed me a letter from a girl, Amy. I was giddy with joy at the idea of having a pen pal to correspond with, never mind the gender. I was excited the whole day, as was the entire class. I rushed home and grabbed a notebook to write the letter in. Carefully, I drafted the letter. My parents brought home the international postage envelope so that I could mail the letter to my new pen pal. I tore off the pages of my letter from the notebook, folded them, and placed them in the envelope carefully. I was very particular about getting the address right. Then began the wait for the reply. Every day, I hoped that today would be the day that I would get a reply. Every evening, I asked my mom if the postman had brought something for me. Then, after several days of waiting, Miss Zaina walked into our classroom looking kind of angry. She scolded us for sending our letters on notebook or foolscap paper. We had learned to be silent when being scolded. Then one boy spoke up, saying that even they had sent their letters on foolscap sheets. This seemed to give Miss Zaina a pause, and she nodded and left our classroom. This interaction left me very confused because what else would one write letters on? We, in my family, either wrote letters to our extended family members on inland letters or on notebook sheets. This was the 80s. So these sheets, we tore them out of those notebooks and we put them in envelopes and sent our letters. This is the only way we knew how to correspond in the postal system. At that time, I was not aware that there were special pads and sheets devoted to writing letters, which was separate from notebooks and foolscap sheets. We simply did not have that exposure. So, how could we do something when we did not even know about it? After a couple more weeks, one day a very beautiful envelope was waiting for me when I reached home. My mom informed me that my pen pal had indeed written back to me. I was beyond myself with joy. Miss Zaina had probably spoken to the principal over there. While the envelope itself was very beautiful, the sheets on which the letter had been written were even better. My pen pal had enclosed 4 photographs of herself and her horses. She lived on a rambling estate, and her family owned several horses. One of the photographs that she sent me was of herself in her riding gear, standing with her favorite horse. There were a few other equally lovely things in the envelope. I cherished this letter and put it in the most special place in my cupboard, the secret locker, the locker within the locker. I would pull it out every so often and go through everything again and again and feel the same joy each time I read the letter and looked at the photographs and looked at the gifts. I excitedly wrote back to Amy, my pen pal, and posted the letter. And then the wait began. At this time, I genuinely did not know about snobbery or being snubbed. Not in this way, at least. I waited and waited and waited, week after week after week. After several months, I realized that Amy wasn't going to write to me again. I neither had access to fancy letter writing materials, nor did I even know where to procure them. I was amazed that this was the reason that the girl did not write to me again. The fact that she was rich and I was middle class. Like what? I could not believe that kids could be so shallow and cruel. We had always been taught to put ourselves in the other person's shoes to understand their situation. I tried to put myself in her shoes and see if I too would judge a pen pal based on the kind of paper she wrote on, or based on the contents of her letter indicating that she was not as rich as I was, or maybe not as smart as I was, with not as much exposure to the world. When I think honestly about what I might do if I were in a privileged position, I still think being cruel wouldn't come so readily to me. She broke my heart. This was the first time I was ghosted. The slow realization that another person was choosing to avoid me, that feeling of being rejected, cuts deep. I already had low self esteem. That made it fall lower. The meanness shown by my pen pal Amy and others did make me feel more self conscious than ever before. I was already a highly sensitive kid. I was painfully aware of my clothes and hair being different from those around me, the home stitched clothes, the long oily braids, the untrimmed hair. I could see when others around me were classy, and this made me want to fit in even more badly. And then this would make me even more shy and self conscious. The catch 22 continued. The ghosting by my pen pal was another little taste of how the world could be. I kept the letter for several more years before finally throwing it away. The tearing and throwing away of the letter was cathartic. After that, I did not feel as hurt about it. Of course, Amy was not the last person to make me feel bad about myself, nor was she the first. But we will talk more about that some other time. In the next episode, I'll tell you something about some ghostly encounters that I had. Yes, I'll be talking about the ghosts that I met. Till then, stay healthy, stay happy. Bye for now.